Hi everybody, today I'm going to be talking about how to use a food journal to help you heal your gut. I used a food journal to help me heal my gut issues. I had chronic constipation, bloating, abdominal pain, and gas, and just IBS symptoms for 10 years, and I started using a food journal and I found it really helpful for healing, and then I went on to use a food journal for a whole 4 years. I found it a really helpful experience, so I actually use it with all of my clients now, and I find that it's just a really powerful tool for helping you to accurately track your progress to see those little improvements. It's really helpful for pinpointing just what habits are working well for you, what foods are working well for you, and which ones aren't. It also keeps you more accountable if you've got to write down what you're eating. And it ultimately just really helps you to overcome your symptoms and heal your gut faster. If you don't know me already, my name is Kaylee. I'm a certified nutritionist and gut health specialist, and I love helping people to overcome their chronic gut issues. So first, I'm going to talk about what to include in your food log, how to make those adjustments. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'm going to share more specifically what I actually narrowed down through using a food log and what I found to really help me personally overcome my gut issues and then stay symptom-free these past 7 years. All right, so first, what to include. So first, you're gonna need a journal or a document on your computer or some place where you're actually gonna write down your food log. I like pencil and paper. I like to use the composition notebooks, but you can use whatever you want. Like I said, I have my clients do this, so I get a lot of food logs emailed to me, and people get very creative. I've seen a lot of different options. A lot of people have used different formats. They've used like Google Docs or the Google Sheets. I've seen people get special notebooks that are specifically for food log tracking. So whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, whatever works for you. All right, so you have your food log. You're going to want to write the date, obviously, and then you want to write each meal or snack followed by which foods you ate. Now, the more specific with the preparations and the measurements, the better. You want to log everything that goes into your mouth, except for water is optional. You don't have to log that. But it's really important to log everything so you accurately know where you're at. A lot of people will snack and reach for things throughout the day that they didn't even realize they were doing. You also want to write down what time you ate your meal. And you want to write down notes after each meal about how you felt after eating. So, for example, I would write whether I felt light or bloated, if I felt satisfied, if I wasn't quite satisfied and still felt like I needed something, if I felt too full, if it wasn't enough, just anything that comes to mind and any symptoms that you're having. So sometimes I'll see people put their symptoms like right after the meal, and then I've also had clients have like separate symptom columns. So again, organize it in whatever way helps you, but you do want to track your symptoms. So you want to write down when you're constipated, when you have gas, when you're bloated, when you're uncomfortable, when you have burning, when you have any symptoms, headaches, whatever you're dealing with, you want to track all of that. And you also want to track your bowel movements too. So you want to write down every time you have a bowel movement, and you also want to include notes about it. So if you're familiar with the Bristol stool chart, you can write the number on the Bristol stool chart that your stools are at. You want to write kind of a rough amount about the amount, and then you want to write about the consistency and the shape as well. So, are you having sausage-shaped stools? Are you having rocky hard stools? Are you having loose stools? You want to note about that in your food log so that you can come back and use that information later. Also, if there's any abnormal color or just anything notable about it, if you had pain, if there was blood, if there was mucus, if it's pale, greasy stools, whatever you have, if they're orange or yellow in color, like write that down. And then you also want to write any supplements or herbs, or if you did an enema or anything like that, you want to include it in your food log. All right, now optional, you can put your macros, so that's calories, fat, carbs, and protein. I did this because I found it really fascinating, and I started this around the time I was getting all passionate and interested in nutrition, so I wanted to see how the macros affected me, but it's not something that you have to do. I also did it because I weightlift, so I wanted to see how it affected my training as well. So it's totally up to you. Sometimes I'll have clients track their macros for a few weeks because they're curious, but they don't want to repeatedly do it forever. If you do it, it gets way easier and way less time consuming with time, but it's completely optional. You can also put your weight in there. That's something that I like to do too, is just to weigh myself and write it down. This is especially helpful if you have either a weight loss or a weight gain goal. If you're just maintaining and you find it easy to maintain, it's not necessary, but I find it easy to maintain and I still like to do it. Okay, you can also include the hours that you slept the night before. I have had a lot of clients really love that idea and use it to help them sleep longer, just having that accountability again. You can track your water intake if you want. I personally am a little bit bigger of a fan of just drinking when I'm thirsty and looking at the color of my urine. It should be like a light yellow color. If it's clear, you're drinking too much. If it's dark yellow, you're not drinking enough. You can track it though. You can also track your cycle info if you're a woman if you want. I personally have a whole separate journal where I in-depth track my cycle, but if you just track a few different notes about it, then you're welcome to include that. I've had lots of clients include if they're on their period or something like that, just because it affects your overall health, and just to kind of have that info in there too. So up to you. You can also include your waking temperature. So if you're tracking your cycle a lot, you probably already are tracking this, but if you have thyroid issues or metabolism issues, it can also be beneficial to track your waking temperature. So if you're doing that, you can include that in your food log. And then just any other notes you find helpful. I have had clients include notes about their workouts or whether or not it was a work day. If you have any other health goals you're working on, you can track that as well. Currently, one of my health goals is actually working on peeing less frequently, and I have been tracking every time that I pee, and it has been incredibly helpful. So do not underestimate the power of writing things down. It really shows you where you're at. All right, so those are the things that I recommend you include, and the optional things. So let's look at an example here. All right, so this is a hypothetical example of someone named Sam. Now, this is all based off of things that I see very regularly with my clients and things I experienced. I just don't want to share one of my clients' food logs because it has kind of personal information. And then I don't have my food logs from back when I had digestive issues, and I don't think one that says sat well, feels good all the time is very helpful. So here's an example of, yes, Sam's food log. So first you write the date, like I mentioned, again, this is hypothetical, but say it was Friday the 9th. You want to write that down. And for this one, I chose to include how long you're sleeping. So I put 7 hours for, I put the weight down, 145.5 pounds. And then I had it, so different people do this different. Some of my clients will put notes separate from their meals more, and some keep their notes more around their meals. So anyway, I've had a lot of clients do this where they just put notes from the morning time when they first wake up before they have their breakfast. So here I put some notes down. So Sam noted she did not sleep enough. She feels better with 9 hours of sleep. 7 hours isn't enough. So she jotted that down. She also woke up with some bloating. She had eaten too much and too late the night before. She had a whole burrito at 9 p.m. and she's realizing that doesn't work well for her, and the beans made her really gassy. This is drawn from my own experience here. All right, so then when it comes to breakfast time, so Sam started at 8, she was done at 8:20. It can be helpful to note when you're done with breakfast too, not just when you start it. So she had 2 fried eggs with sauteed veggies, a cup of chard, a cup of kale, a quarter of an onion sliced, garlic clove, and sauteed in a tablespoon of butter, with a regular 16 ounce mug of coffee with a quarter cup of whole milk. Now, how detailed you write this is up to you. If you're tracking macros, you definitely need to be very specific, and you would need to be a little more specific than this. You'd need to specify whether the cup of chard was cut, chopped and raw, or whether you're measuring cooked, how you're doing that, and the grams is really helpful. But if you're not tracking macros, you don't have to be quite this specific. It's just kind of helpful to write down as much detail as possible, because it's very easy to forget certain things or not include details that could make a big difference. Maybe you didn't write down that you sauteed it in butter, and that could be a crucial component for you. Maybe you're not tolerating any dairy, including butter right now, and if that's the case, that detail would be really helpful. You might think, oh, I'll just write down the food, but coffee might be not working well for you. So if you don't have that detail to go off of, that's going to hinder you. So I just recommend writing down as much detail as possible. All right, so then notes after. So Sam noted she's not very hungry for this meal. She still felt really full and bloated from the night before. She felt like it was still too early to eat, and she wants to try eating at 9 a.m. instead because she thinks that she'll have more of an appetite by then. She also felt a bit full and bloated after breakfast. She did have a bowel movement after, and it was about a 3 on the Bristol stool chart. This is something a lot of my clients have done, is noted the Bristol stool chart number of their stools in their log. So that's definitely something you can do. You can look up the Bristol stool chart for reference, but if you're not familiar with it, a 4 is ideal. So a 3 is just a little bit more on the constipated side, a little bit drier, a little bit rockier than a standard like sausage shaped regular stool. So she noted it was a bit hard, but it was getting better than her previous bowel movements. It wasn't quite complete though. She did get some relief from it, but the bloating wasn't not all the way gone. Okay, so she also noted that she really didn't feel like she was getting a protein in this meal, so she wants to try adding breakfast sausage from now on. She also noted that the veggies just didn't feel the best. It was a little bit too much fiber, and they weren't really providing enough carbs, so she didn't have a very balanced macro split here, so she wants to try a grapefruit instead. And then she also noted that the coffee felt good, and it's been helping her to have an urge for a bowel movement. So a lot of the notes here are based off of my own experience and what I found in charting my own food log, but I will get into more what I learned a little bit later. All right, so let's look at Sam's lunch. So she notes that she started lunch at 2:55 and ended around 3:12. She had a sandwich from the grocery store. It was 2 pieces of bread with turkey, cheddar, sprouts, tomato, and mayo. Now, she was unsure of the exact portions because it was from the store, but she noted it was a huge sandwich. She also noted, I waited too long to eat. She felt very famished and hungry and exhausted and really uncomfortable before eating. And she noted that when she gets this way, she tends to overeat and food sits like a rock in her stomach, which is exactly what happened today. She also noted her digestion was weak and this sandwich was too heavy. So she noted that in the future, she really needs to plan ahead and bring a healthy lunch to work, and she needs to take her lunch break at 1 p.m. that she'll often skip so that she can eat earlier and not get to that famished point. And then because she planned ahead of time and bring something healthy, she'll be able to stick to her diet goals better. She also noted that she felt a weak, sunken stomach feeling, bloating, really uncomfortable, and her tummy just really hurt after this meal. All right, so now we're going to look at what Sam ate about a week later at breakfast and lunch. Now, you would go on to include dinner and a whole day, but I think you get the gist from just 2 meals, and I don't want this to be too long. So we're going to look again at about a week later, the next Friday, what she did and how she's incorporated changes since the previous week based on her notes and how she's feeling. So now you see that she slept 9 hours instead of 7. She took her own suggestion, and she notes here 9 hours of sleep felt great. Her weight, 144.3, just slightly lower. That was probably just, when we get into this, you'll see she's a little less bloated, a little less constipated. So that's probably where the slight weight loss came from. But also, it's normal to fluctuate a pound or 2 or even 3 every day to day. Okay, so for also in the morning, she notes she woke up feeling light and really energized. So that's awesome. Now, breakfast, she moved to 9 instead of eating around 8 because she thought that would feel better. And apparently it did. So she eats at 9:03 to 9:19. She had 2 fried eggs. She substituted her greens for that grapefruit. She also added the 2 ounces of pork breakfast sausage like she wanted to. Kept the coffee, kept the milk in the coffee, and she noted that waiting till 9 to eat is feeling much better. She's actually getting hungrier for her meals, and they're sitting better. She also notes that her meals sat light and was very satisfying, and she had no bloating after. She also says meat, eggs, and fruit is feeling really, really great for breakfast for her. And she had a bowel movement, but this time it was a 4 on the Bristol stool chart, so that nice sausage shape that's not too dry and not too loose, and it was a complete bowel movement. So yeah, as you can see, she's taken a lot of her own suggestions and feeling a lot better. Now for lunch, she started at 1 and went to 1:22. So again, she took her own suggestion and is starting her lunch a little bit earlier, actually taking her lunch break. And she brought her own meal. So she made a homemade chicken Caesar salad. She notes here it had 6 ounces of cooked chicken thigh with the skin, 2 cups of chopped romaine lettuce, 3 anchovies, 2.5 tablespoons of homemade Caesar dressing, 1.5 tablespoons of Parmesan, juice of half a lemon, and then she had a 16-ounce mug of homemade bone broth here. I got all those measurements from my own chicken Caesar salad recipe. But anyway, so she notes that it sat very light and felt very well. It was very satisfying. She had no bloating after. And she also said, I prepped 3 of these on Tuesday to have for work for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that worked really well. I also made a big batch of bone broth on the weekend and brought it in a thermos to work. And then the bone broth was very soothing, and the warmth made the salad easier to digest. And she also noted she's been actually taking her lunch break at 1 p.m., which feels much better. So again, even though these are made up examples, they're all based off of things I've noticed in myself and then in all of my clients as well. And it might not be a week till you see this big of an improvement, but the point I wanted to get across here was like what to write in your food log, and just to kind of show you how you can start to tell things for yourself of what's going on, because when you start to write your food down, you will start to notice these patterns. And I laid them out very quickly because I've done this for a long time and I'm getting very used to them, but you will learn these pretty quickly. It's not that hard to be like, I didn't sleep enough, like I wasn't hungry yet for my meal, I need to wait longer. And just by writing it down, you will really start to notice these patterns. So the main takeaway here is you want to look at your notes frequently, really take notes of these patterns that you're noticing and how you feel. You want to change things accordingly, and then you want to reevaluate. So the example of when to eat breakfast is something that I noticed in myself. I used to try to eat breakfast really early. It didn't sit well. I thought I will try eating later. And when I started eating later, I felt a lot better. So you get to experiment. It's actually really fun. You get to really personalize this for yourself. I will tell you, I've looked at a lot of food logs. Nobody's food log is the same. They shouldn't be the same. This is really an exercise for you to personalize it to yourself. So let's talk about some things to take note of while you're looking over your food log to evaluate it and see what you can change, what you can perfect, what's working well for you, what you need to change. All right, so you can look at what time you're eating. This I've already talked about a little bit. Are you eating too early? Are you eating too late? You can look at your meal spacing. You want to space your meals at least 3 hours apart. That is ideal. If you are spacing them too long, then you can start to get that hungry feeling, the tiredness, the hangriness, and all that come on. So you might notice in your food logs that you're waiting 7 hours and you're only eating 2 meals a day and it's not feeling good. So then you would want to change that. On the contrary, that could work for some people for sure. I'm not saying that's terrible, but it might not be working well for you. So look at your meal timing, look at your meal spacing, look at when your symptoms are occurring. So for example, like, is your bloating kind of accumulating and really getting worse at the end of the day? Are you waking up bloated because, you ate late night before, what you ate the night before wasn't working well for you? Like, do you always get the same symptom after a certain food? Like, I had a client that used to get diarrhea like clockwork every time she ate eggs, and she actually was able to overcome this, but at first she realized, I can't eat eggs right now, which, eggs is a food that a lot of people can eat, and it's really nourishing and great for healing, so it's kind of unfortunate. But she worked on changing her diet, healing her gut, and she actually switched to making sure she got soy-free eggs and noticed that she was fine after that and could eat eggs again. So if you have a food sensitivity, it's not forever. And then also note that don't get too hard into this realm of is this food making me react? Is this food making me react? Like, I had bloating. Was it the peppers from breakfast? Like, was it the eggs? Was it the dairy? Like, you don't have to narrow it down that much. You just need to make sure that your diet as a whole is going to be supporting your healing, rebalancing your body, and fixing those underlying root causes and imbalances. Now, if there is a food that you react to like clockwork, like, cut that out. You want to listen to your body. If something is not working well for you, don't include it. And it's very important to analyze this in your food logs. But at the same time, I see a lot of people like hyper analyze this, and you don't have to narrow down the exact cause of your symptoms every single time, as long as you understand the deeper root cause and what you need to do on a day-to-day basis to heal that long term. So if you get bloated, you don't have to narrow down the exact food that bloated you. You just have to realize, like, okay, most of the time this is connected to my gut microbiome and having gut dysbiosis and overgrowth of pathogenic microbes. Am I doing the things I need to do to rebalance my gut microbiome so I won't bloat to like any food anymore? Yeah, so you want to write down your symptoms. You want to write down when you're having your symptoms. And if you have any little theories to test out, definitely write those down too. You can also write down your macros if you want. It is optional. I personally did that, but you don't have to do that. I will also have clients sometimes do it for a few weeks just to see where they're at macro-wise, but they don't want to track long-term. That's fine too. If you're not familiar with macros, that's calories, carbs, fat, and protein. Okay, so you also have to write down the foods you're eating, and then you can write down like habits to change to make you more consistent at sticking to your goals. So like in the example I shared, she needed to prep her food before work so that she would have a healthy meal. And that's something I got from myself too. I used to make 3 salads at a time, chicken salads, then have enough protein to bring to school or work back when I was in college. I found that super helpful. All right, let's move on to what I learned personally from keeping a food log. So I learned that I don't do well eating early or late. Now I have a little bit more flexibility with the late now that I've healed, but back when I had bad gut issues, I did not do well eating early. It just did not work. My stomach wasn't ready for it. It didn't sit well. I would try to eat at like 7 before school. I'd even try to eat at 8, but 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock is really what worked best for me and what still works best for me. One really interesting thing on here is Dr. Natasha, who's famous for making the GAPS diet. She talks about how your body is actually like detoxing overnight, and it's just these natural detoxing systems in your body, and different people finish that kind of at different times in the morning. So if you're not hungry early in the morning, sometimes your body's still detoxing and it's not quite ready to move on to digesting and eating yet. Now, there are a lot of variations here. You know, if you are struggling with your thyroid and fertility and metabolism and that whole kind of spectrum of issues, then eating a little bit earlier can be very beneficial in healing that. But if you're not struggling with that and your main issues are gut and digestive issues, you're probably going to benefit from waiting a little bit, especially if you get up early. You know, if you get up at 9 and then you go to eat, no problem. But if you get up at 5 or 6, you know, you're probably not going to be hungry that early in the morning. Anyway, I also noticed at the time I did best finishing my dinner earlier, being done eating by about 7 or 8, and just having that ending of the day to really digest my food and not add anything else before bed. Now, since healing my gut, I've gained a lot more flexibility, and if something happens and I end up eating at 9 o'clock, it's not a problem for me anymore and I digest it just fine, but at the time, that was not working. I also noticed I do best with 3 meals spaced out at least 3 hours apart and no snacks. Now, I have changed this over time. When I was first healing my gut, I was actually doing 4, and that worked great at the time. I like 3 meals a day now better because it just gives me more flexibility. So for example, now I eat breakfast around 9:30 to 10, I eat lunch around 2 to 3, and I eat dinner around like 5 to 7, and sometimes that gets a little bit later, but that's how it usually goes. So I personally like having that flexibility. When I had 4 meals a day, I felt a little more like, oh, I got to get this meal in by this time so it won't interfere with the next one. And I don't want to skip my afternoon snack meal. It just felt like more pressure for me. And now eating 3 meals, I feel like I get to eat more at each meal. I really enjoy it. Breakfast and dinner are my favorite meals, and lunch is just kind of like, I feel like I need 3 meals and wouldn't do well with 2. So I just eat something in the middle of the day, something good and thoughtfully prepared, but still. Breakfast and dinner are my favorites. But yeah, so 3 meals at least 3 hours apart is what works best for me now. And like I mentioned, I used to do 4. Now I do 3. You can change. This is not set in stone forever. You don't have to eat the exact same way forever. That's one of the great things about food logs, is you can tell what's working for you at that season of life, at that time, but it can shift. I also noticed that I really need balanced macros, especially enough protein in my meals, but I need enough protein, fat, and carbs. I personally don't do the best with low anything. I especially need enough protein. I especially need enough fat. But even like super low carb, I can do, and it's fine, but I function better with a little bit of carbs, not a ton, but having a little bit more than full-on keto. So anyway, my current macros, which it was a little bit lower back when I was healing my digestive issues, because I've been lifting weights for like 7 or 8 years now, so I've gotten stronger, my metabolism has increased, I've got more muscle, so I need to eat more. So currently I eat 2,500 to 2,700 calories a day. I get 50% of my calories from fat, so that equals around 150 grams. I get about 27% of my calories from carbs, so that's about 150 to 190 grams. And then I get about 23% of my calories from protein, which is about 140 to 150 grams. And that also meets my target of a gram of protein per pound of body weight, because I weigh 145 pounds right now, so that 140 to 150 is just right for that goal as well. So anyway, those are what work best for me personally right now. That's another thing that you can narrow down in tracking your food. You can track your macros and figure out what works best. All right, so I also noticed that I do best eating more animal foods. I can't have too much bread, grains, or veggies, or I have more tolerance for it now. Just when you heal your gut, you get more tolerance, and you can handle it better without getting symptoms. But especially at the time, I would get really bloated and stuffed, and I just didn't feel good. I even remember like visiting family who were really big on eating veggies when I had gut issues, and just noticing the difference from at home not eating as many but eating tons of veggies, visiting family like feeling more bloated and stuffed. So yeah, I just noticed I do much better centering my diet around meat. Now I still eat fruits, I still eat veggies. Now that I'm healed, I eat some sourdough bread, I'll have some rice or oatmeal on occasion, but I really just have to center my diet around meat and eggs and dairy, and then fruits and some well-cooked veggies without overdoing the veggies, and then I can have a little bit of other plant foods, but just not going crazy with it. So that was a huge thing I noticed. My God, I was so much less bloated once I finally let go a lot of the plant foods. And when I increased my protein. When I started out, I was vegan, vegetarian, and I did not eat enough protein, and just by increasing protein, I actually started having more regular bowel movements and not bloating as much. So make sure you're getting enough protein in. If you're a woman, like at least 100 grams of protein per day, but ideally a gram per pound of body weight. So I also noticed that I feel far more satiated from my meals now, ever since I upped my fat, protein, decreased my carbs, and cut out seed oils. So back when I had really bad gut issues, I was vegan and vegetarian. I ate very high carb, way too low protein. I was getting fats in, but it was from oils that I didn't know were bad, like sunflower oil. I knew canola oil and vegetable oil weren't good, but I didn't know sunflower oil wasn't good at the time, so I used to cook with that. You know, I'd eat avocados, eat tons of nuts and nut butter, but it just really wasn't enough quality good fats. So anyway, so when I was having that, I just wasn't getting satiated. You need fat and protein to satiate you. Also, because of the seed oils block your ability to burn fat effectively. So normally you are, after you eat, you're burning carbs for fuel, essentially. So you have a glycogen store where you're storing carbohydrates and you use that for energy. However, that runs out after a certain period of time. So if you get to this point where you've burned through all your glycogen stores, Normally, in a healthy metabolism, you would just switch over to burning your stored fat for fuel. But if you have been eating a lot of seed oils, they end up getting stored in your fats, and that unstable fat is what your fat is made up of. So your body actually essentially kind of blocks your ability to burn your own fat, because if it was, it would release these like oxidized oils and free radicals into your body, which can do a lot of harm. So if you consume a lot of seed oils, plus if you have metabolic syndrome and all of that kind of stuff as well, like diabetes or pre-diabetes or those sorts of things, you can get those blood sugar crashes as well. So basically, you've run out of carbs, you can't really switch into burning fat, so you get like starving and famished. So I used to get that way. But once I got more fat adapted, and I actually did keto for a little period of time for this, but you don't necessarily need to do that to achieve this result. But yeah, when I cut out the seed oils, upped the fat and protein, then suddenly I could go for longer. And ever since then, I never really get like famished or like I have to eat now. It'll be like, oh yeah, I'm kind of hungry, I could eat. But it used to be like the thought of skipping a meal was like, oh my God, I can't skip a meal. Like that would be horrible. But now it's like, whatever. If it had to happen, it would happen. It barely ever happens. But if it did for some reason, I'm like, oh, I would be fine. I would have energy still. I wouldn't feel starving. So anyway, that's just something really interesting that I learned from research, but also from tracking my food as well. I also learned that for me personally, I feel best having 1 to 2 bowel movements nearly every day. That is my personal normal. People can vary here, but essentially it's usually going to be about a bowel movement a day to 3 bowel movements a day is the healthy-ish range. Skipping a day on occasion is totally fine too. Some people just have that quick metabolism. Maybe they eat a lot and they just got to have 3 a day. But some people will just have 1 solid one a day, and that's plenty for them. So there is a little variation here. Now, some websites I've looked at, like, I don't remember what it was, but anyway, some definitions will be like, oh, a normal healthy bowel movement is every 3 days to 3 a day. If you're going every 3 days, that's not healthy. You're constipated. You should be going almost every day. Like I said, skipping a day here and there is not a big issue. I skip a day every once in a while, but it shouldn't be like multiple days back to back, and it shouldn't be very often. So for me, 1 to 2, usually 1 is my normal. So that also helps me tune into like, am I having enough? So something that can come up every once in a while is if I'm on a trip, it can be a little bit harder sometimes. So just being mindful of knowing my normal, I can go, okay, I got to put a little extra effort in to make sure that I keep up with this and don't miss too many days. So I also realized that the best time for me to have a bowel movement is in the morning, usually after breakfast. Sometimes I will wake up with the urge to go, and I will go immediately in the morning, or usually not immediately, but not too long after waking up. But the majority of time I'll go after breakfast. If I'm going to have a second one, it's usually like 1 before breakfast, 1 after breakfast, or like 2 after breakfast. Occasionally the afternoon, not very often though. So I learned my normal time. Now how you can use that is if you're having trouble having regular bowel movements, you can make sure you have relaxed time set aside every day at that time to go try to have bowel movement. I also learned that back when I had those gut issues, if I felt really bad, my stomach felt like heavy, bloated, and I just felt like food wasn't working for me, like I had a weak digestion, and like the last thing I wanted to do was eat. The best thing for me was to have like a little bit of something at a meal and then just kind of reassess, because sometimes, like I remember one night, I was like, I'm not hungry. I'm just going to have some of these dolmas, those grape leaves that have like rice on the inside that my mom had. I was like, okay, I'm just going to have a little bit of that. And I started out with 1, and then I ended up eating like a lot more. So sometimes you end up realizing you're hungry for more. Now that's not a balanced meal. This is back when I was vegan. Like, you need to have more protein than rice and grape leaves. But my point is, I got in this habit of, if I felt really funky, if I felt really off, I would just eat a little bit and see how it felt if it was at a mealtime. And then I just proceed from there. So if it felt like, oh no, I really can't eat something, I'd be like, okay, no worries, I won't. I'll just wait till the next meal. And then if it felt like, oh, actually I'm relaxing a little bit, I'm feeling hungrier now, then I could eat more. So I noticed for me that worked really well. I also noticed that if I felt off, it was really important to be mindful of what foods I picked. So one of my favorite meals, actually, when I was feeling off, was scrambled eggs. I just noticed that like scrambled eggs, some veggies and cheese and tortillas. Again, I was vegetarian at the time, so now I would add sausage or bacon or ham or some kind of meat. But that kind of meal was really warm and soft. I really liked the corn tortillas with that. Soup is always good, but just making sure you have something more warm, more focused on animal foods is what I would definitely recommend now. But that is what worked better for me if I was feeling a little off and not having like a big burrito or sandwich. That never really ended so well. I also learned that fasted workouts first thing in the morning work great for me. Now, when I had constipation and gut issues, it was really nice because it helped stimulate a bowel movement later, but also food just always sat so funny in my stomach and I'd feel like bloated and uncomfortable, and I didn't really like going to work out when I felt all bloated and uncomfortable. So if I started in the morning before that happened, I could get my workout in a lot easier and I wouldn't have to time it between my meals. So I just got in the habit of working out fasted in the morning. And now, well, I don't need to do that. Occasionally oftentimes I'll go on a run midday on the weekend. During the week, I do all my weightlifting fasted in the morning before I have breakfast and start work and, start the whole day. So I personally love it and it works excellent for me. Everybody's a little different, but that's another thing I learned. So hopefully this helped give you a lot of ideas on what to actually write in your food log, how to use it to help you heal your gut. It becomes really intuitive. I know that you want a lot of direction when you go into this, so hopefully I gave you a lot of direction here. But really, a lot of these realizations will come just as you're focusing on your diet, as you're focusing on how you feel, and as you're writing it down. You will learn so much. And if you want more help with this, this is something that I can help you with. I help people to heal chronic gut issues at the root, and I do that looking at their diet and then helping people with their lifestyle as well to make sure that they address those root causes and get their whole digestive system functioning well, heal their gut, get their body working well again, and help them to overcome the symptoms naturally and, help you not get the symptoms again in the future. And I do food logs with people. So the first 2 months that I work with somebody, I will have them write down everything they eat, and then every single week they send me their food logs, and then I give very, very detailed feedback. It usually takes me about an hour for each one because I'm very thorough in this, and I've gotten a lot of feedback that this is one of the things that has helped a lot of my clients the most out of my program is the feedback on the food log. So like that example food log I was giving earlier, a lot of the notes in there are things that I would give to a client if that's the food log that I got sent as well. So I'm always looking at people's nutrient consumption, if they're eating gut healing, gut friendly foods, how their habits are, are they not having enough protein at breakfast? Are they eating too many times in the day? Are they spacing it out enough? Are they not eating enough? Or all these little different factors I look over for you, and then I give you tons of feedback. So if you want more help just working through the process of healing your gut and really getting your diet down, then I would love to help you with that. And if you want to learn more about what I offer in my coaching program, you can check out the link down below where you can book a call with me, and I'm happy to share more about what I offer and see if it's a good fit for you. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, put them down below in the comments. This video is actually a request from the comments of a recent video that I made, so I really love hearing your guys' suggestions. I might just make my next video on your suggestions, so I'd love to hear it, and I love reading your comments too, so feel free to say hi down below or ask your questions. I love to talk to you guys. And yeah, if you liked this video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing for more gut healing videos, and I will see you next time.